ladies and gentlemen. What a show here we have today. I mean, Carter, we're coming off a huge win for the Green Bay Packers. A really nice performance by them. But once again, you're watching the Beer, Meat, and Cheese podcast here on ESPN Sports. Johnny Samp and Carter Decker, my co-hosts. We're both talking football, and that's what we like to do. We like to have fun with it. Great time here to have another gentleman speaking football. You know, I did the last one last week, Carter, by myself, and it was kind of lonely. It was kind of lonely. I know your dog's sitting in that sort of thing, but it's tough to do when you got it one person. I mean, it's just me talking to the camera. And you know, it's always good time, but it gets a little lonely, Mr. Carter, so I'm happy to have you back. But
I'm happy to be back. You crushed it, so don't worry about that.
I don't know if I crushed it. I went off, just going off the rails a little bit. Sometimes you just play with your mind and see what else you can think of, just to have fun with it. But we got a excellent show for you guys today. Lots of Packers football, lots of football discussion all around. A lot happening right now, right before that trade deadline coming up here in now, what is that, 2 weeks? 2 weeks on Tuesday? It's actually election day too. So it's going to be a huge day. But let's talk about it here. Let's start with the Packers win 24-22 over the Texans. Like, my goodness, folks. We beat them. We got the dub. Romeo Doubs had a solid game, too. I would give him that. I know you love your Doubs. He did have, obviously, some outside of the locker room issues going on, but it seems like he's back, ready to go. But let's talk about this win most recently, and it comes down to a field goal by the guy we just signed. I mean, that's pretty incredible. McManus knocks it down, gives us a 24-22 win. It was lots of fun to watch. And what are your first impressions of that contest?
Impressions, man. I'm just glad we got the win. Yeah, it's about the wins at the end of the day, and especially when it comes down to the playoff picture, it's about the wins. This one was hard fought. We definitely didn't do our best. We didn't play our best on either side of the ball. Well, one side definitely more than the other. But we pulled it out. You know what that matters, or that's all that matters. I'm sorry, is that we came out with the win and we did it as a team. We didn't do it solo. We didn't do it on one side of the ball. We all rallied at the end of the day and got it done. Special teams, offense, defense, we took care of it. So I liked it. It was fun to see. Not so great in the sense of the inconsistency we've been having on the offensive side of the ball. But defense, lights out. They played great. Still allowed 22 points, but really easy when our offense allows 16 points off turnovers. So for them to keep them to only 22 points was huge. Then to come out and stop them when we really needed it, especially by our rookie, Evan Williams going out there and making a huge stop on the 2-point conversion, which at the end of the day, all the difference. So I'm really happy we won. Like you said, plenty of things to nitpick at and talk about, but at the end of the day, a W is a W, and we're moving on to the next week.
So we'll start with some positives here, just looking through the stat line for the Packers and the Texans, and Packers look a little bit better than that Texans stat line. Jordan Love, 24 for 33, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. And then on the other side, C.J. Stroud, he did not play well at all. 10 for 21 and 86 yards. I mean, really uncharacteristic for that kind of style of quarterback. And that's a good thing to see from that Packers defense, shutting down top-tier quarterbacks. I mean, if you want to say it, I know it is his second year. Sophomore slump can play into effect. There is that theory that goes into it. But he did not look good at all. Defense was all over the place. Jeff Hafley did a really nice job. Did a really nice job at programming around Stroud and setting up a good playbook for that, because he could have went off easily on us. And he couldn't even get started. Couldn't even turn the key over, even with the talented roster that he has. Some thoughts initially on how the defense played against Stroud.
I think the lack of Nico Collins played a pretty decent role on the offensive side for the Texans. But like you said, they have plenty of wide receiver depth, and they got plenty of offensive playmakers over there. Unfortunately, Joe Mixon is pretty good, as some people like to say. So he ended up cutting us up 80-plus yards in the first half. But our defense really held them to a good standard, only allowing for, I believe, less than 35 yards in the second half. So at the end of the day, we ended up picking it up, and we got it done when it needed. We did a really, really good job of containing. I know last week, or a few weeks ago, sorry, when we were talking about Arizona, we were really concerned about holding Kyler, and we did a great job of keeping him in the pocket, not letting him scramble a ton. And CJ Stroud is known for that. He's got legs, he's got wheels. So we did a great job, like you said, of just not letting him get started. Didn't really let him get huge chunk of yards. He played it safe, which I'll also give it to him. No interceptions. He did get sacked 4 times, which is awesome for the offense, or excuse me, for the defense. Um, we really only held him to a total of 55 total passing yards. 86, of course, over the air, but with the sacks and everything that they've taken, ended up only being 55. So I think the defense really stepped up, played great coverage down the field, didn't really let anything get open. And when we did, we rallied to the ball and we made sure that they didn't get huge gains, even though they did tear open one or two. But it's going to happen every game. We did a good job of limiting that, and making sure that our pass defense is quite superior, I would say.
Yeah, and definitely an area of concern going into that game. I definitely thought he was going to probably pick us apart a little bit better than he obviously did. Really couldn't find any sort of movement going forward. He was, throwing for his life, just trying to make something happen. But you did mention in there, and I want to highlight this. Mixon, he had 25 carries, 115 yards, and 2 TDs in the contest. He looks solid. I can't deny that. On the other side, Jacobs for us, 12 carries, 76 yards, and his first receiving touchdown, which was nice to see. Finally getting the monkey off the back there. And
Yeah.
I'm really hoping he opens up a little bit. I know there's a lot of criticism, which I really don't understand how there is criticism around Jacobs. He's, I believe, the fourth leading rusher in the league, and they're still saying he's not producing enough yards. Yes, maybe against the Colts he ran for what, like 150, something like that, in that
Plus,
game, but he was also getting the ball every play. I think he had like 30 plus carries, so
they won
I
every
mean,
yard.
12 carries, 76 yards. That's a little less than, that's probably around 5 yards, I would say, if I can do my math. So 12 times 5 is 60. So it's going to be closer to 6. And then you got 72. So about 6 yards a carry. Um,
Oh yeah.
a little bit north of that, but percentage wise. So really not a bad performance from him. And I know people have been really critical of him, and I really don't understand why. Are obviously it starts with the line on the run blocking and moving that forward, moving that defensive line, winning those trench battles, which we always talk about on my other show, High School Crunch Time, and getting that initial block, which I think the offensive line's actually been doing a better job of. Given what we kind of came into, we didn't have our first round pick playing football. He still hasn't really taken a snap at the level. A lot of questions around Myers, Josh Myers at center. And I think they're really kind of picking up the pace, looking good, and forming as a line unit, which is nice to see. But obviously, what are your thoughts on Jacobs in his rushing performances in recent weeks and how it's looked this season overall?
It's like a lot of people are, so focused on the fantasy football points because I have seen it. He's not putting up the greatest fantasy football points, which does it matter? No, because at the end of the day, we're winning games. It's just a lot of the hype. They want to talk all the talk that they want. But we also got to remember this guy came from a program where he was getting the ball 25 plus times, or maybe even more than that,
Yeah.
a game because they didn't have a ton around him. So now that he's in a little bit better of a situation, at least in my opinion, he's got these receivers, he's got a quarterback, he's got a decent line in front of him. He doesn't have to be that workhorse where he's carrying the ball 20 plus times a game. I think 12 is a respectable number, and like you said, over 5.5 yards a carry, that's fantastic for him. I mean, that's huge. And on 12 carries, that's great. So, do we want him to break 100 yards every single game? Absolutely. That'd be a great stat line. But at the end of the day, like you said, he's top 5 in the running game, and he's just pushing it forward. I mean, it's going to be hard to catch, Derrick Henry. King Henry's going to be, he's going to be King Henry anyway. But he's got a lot of season left, and at the end of the day, we're going to start using him. We just want to, keep him in the groove. We don't want to overwork him. We don't want to hurt him because that's plagued him in the past, where he's been overworked and then not so great in the end of the season. We want to keep him around, and we really want to peak towards the end. So I think at the end of the day, Josh Jacobs is on a great path. I think we're utilizing him well in the pass game as well as the run game. Um, did just see a stat the other day where he is or was the longest active I believe, running back with the most amount of catches before his first touchdown. So that streak's finally over.
That monkey's
Now
off
he's
the
got in the
back.
end zone. Exactly. He's back in the end zone. He knows what it feels like to catch that ball and get in there. So, like you said, I think it's going to open a can of worms for defenses, and now they're going to have to pay attention when, he's out there, whether he's split or whether he's in the backfield. They're going to have to respect him one way or the other. So it's just going to keep opening up our offense for us.
Yeah. And we talked about that receiving game. Now let's transition over to the receivers because there is an interesting story in the receiving line this past week. Dobbs, 8 catches, 94 yards. Nothing too exciting, but a solid performance once again by Dobbs. I would have to say, our best hands guy on the Packers roster. I mean, he's got really strong hands, even fighting for a ball, going up and fighting for it. And he's looked really well. But this is the storyline we want to talk about, people. It's Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs returns to Lambeau, and he doesn't do squat. Yep, give him the Jair Alexander. 5 catches, 23 yards. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about you, Carter, but I think you could have put up a better stat line than Stephon did. Now, given you'd have to go
Oh,
against Jair, yeah, I know that might be pushing it a little bit, but let's have some
maybe
fun
a
with
little.
it. A lot of trash talking before the game, and that was with
Yes.
Keyshawn Nixon. I think it started, and then Jair got involved and just kind of collapsed into a big mosh. But obviously Stephon Diggs, total diva. He was a Minnesota Viking at one time. He kind of carried that grudge when he went over to Buffalo. We played him once in Buffalo, I believe it was, and him and Jair kind of got rowdy with it. Just not real appreciative
In the
of each
tunnel.
other. And then finally Jair gets back, and yes, he's not. I wouldn't say he's the highest performing corner in the league, but he does his job and he does it really well. Getting that number one receiver to 23 yards and only 5 catches. I mean, you can't ask for anything better. So what did you think of the performance from Diggs? And on the other side, how did you think Jair did? Because he did a fantastic job, I would say.
I want to say I love the beef. I love the fact that they're going at each other and that there's I think there's a quote floating out there from one of our corners where it's like, oh, I think it was Xavier. He was like, I don't know what started or why it started, but Ja's my brother, and I'm gonna have his back regardless because he's gonna have my back. I love that mentality. I don't know why they got so much beef and they hate each other, other than the fact that they both came in relatively at the same time and they're on, two teams that really don't like each other. It could only get worse if he was on the Bears. So um, that's probably where it all started. But I love the fact that the rest of our secondary is like, we're going to stand there right there and we're going to put our 10 toes down. We're going to stand on business. So I really liked the beef and I liked that they got into it. And then as soon as the game started, um, me being a wide receiver, I mean, that takes you. If you get into it, some wide receivers can really focus and lock it in, and it adds fuel to the fire. And some get distracted, and clearly it looked like it distracted Stefan. Like you said, with that five catches for 23 yards. I mean, that's not great. And he had one catch for 17 yards, which wasn't on Josh. So it I mean, even worse, 4 catches for 5 yards. I mean, or excuse me, 6 yards. It's not great. So I think we did fantastic. I think Stefan probably wasn't all in. He was focused on some other things, and then of course you got CJ just getting buried down on. He wasn't really getting the ball out great either, and he wasn't taking those super risky chances, which I can respect CJ for, because if he would have thrown 2 picks in that game, it would have be a completely different game. So respect him for playing it safe, but from a wide receiver standpoint, he probably wanted opportunities that just didn't come to him, and when he did get the ball, they were little short, rinky-dink routes, and he got lit up quite a few times. So, I like the animosity. I like Ja going out there and just chirping everybody. I remember he chirped Dell in the back of the end zone quite a few times when he wasn't even guarding him. He was just going over there and started talking. So, I like it when they're on my team. I'll be honest. I don't like it when they're not on my team. Watching Jalen Ramsey talk, I'll be honest. That one hurts. So, um, I like it that Ja's on our team. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. I'm glad that he's on our side and he's not on another team.
Yeah, and I think it's a big point to say that obviously trash talks goes into it. I think Ja does a really good job at, like you said, not getting distracted from it. He will start it, but he's often like kind of like a Rodman style. He's going to instigate it, but he's still going to play the ball. He's still going to look good playing it, and he's going to get his stats. And he obviously had a solid game, looked really well, and it was kind of his return back for the team, I would say, with a true number one receiver on him, because he did miss that game against Jefferson with an injury. And I mean, Josh just doing it all, even after a number of years of being apart, he still sparks the fire and gets into Diggs' head and starts things right away, which I was appreciative of. I mean, you gotta love it. It adds a little rivalry fun to it. But let's talk about here. So obviously the Packers signed McManus, and he was clutch in that contest. What did you think of how that drive kind of went, that final drive of the game? And like really, because I really thought it was a good drive in itself, because there's what, minute 44 left in the contest. And I mean, just picking apart that defense front and love getting into that field goal range. Let's have you talk about it a little bit. What were your thoughts on that final drive, getting us to that game-winning field goal?
Yeah, like you said earlier, Dobbs has got strong hands. I got to shout out to my boy Dobbs. He went out there and, like we said, he had a little bit of a rocky week in the past, and things had kind of been going a little weird. But he came back the last week and went hard, and then he came back this week and had the most receiving yards on the team, led the team in that category. And then, of course, when he did get the ball, he made the absolute most of it. I mean, that last drive alone, you had two slants that aren't easy to catch, but yet he came down with them and he made sure that he got the ball. So I think yards, like you said, 90 or 94 yards isn't a crazy game. It's not a huge breakout game for some of the receivers we have nowadays. Um, so I think what matters most is if you go back and watch those catches, it seemed like every time he caught the ball, it meant something. It wasn't like, all right, I just caught the ball, got out of bounds. Or I just caught the ball and we got 4 or 5 yards. No, when he caught the ball, it was like, all right, there's another first down. Or on that last drive, it's another 12-yard, 15-yard gain that we got down the field. That's huge, especially in that 2-minute drill. So I loved seeing it from my standpoint, being, a wide receiver, really getting them involved and, making the most of his throws. Jordan wasn't, throwing the same exact throw, where he's not throwing an out route. He's not throwing his corners every single time, where he could get picked or the defense is going to start predicting it. He did a great job of controlling the clock, and he did an even better job of dispersing the ball and getting it to the right person. If I'm correct, I believe even Wicks had a catch on that drive, and he made the most of it. So I think it was great. We trumped down that field, got down there in the last minute, and then we knew, what we had signed the other day, and we were really just hoping he'd come out there and kick. And if you actually go back and rewatch the film, the first kick he got iced, nailed it right down the center. The second kick actually came out, well, not the kick itself, I'm sorry, but the snap actually fumbled and wasn't even properly put up, at least in the sense of the holder standpoint, wasn't even properly in position by the time he kicked it. So we got extremely lucky that he was just able to muscle that thing in there. And it started leaning a little bit and scared everybody for maybe a quarter second, but then it just went right through and hurt that net. So, like I said, we came out with the win. It was a little bit closer than I'd like, but that final drive just looked like Green Bay Packer football. We went out there, got our 2-minute drill done, and we knew all we needed was the field goal. We weren't going to try and go hard and go for a touchdown, and we made it work. So I'm really proud of our team for pulling it out, especially when we had a little inconsistency in the day. At the end of the day, it's the last drive that matters when you're in these kinds of games. We came out on top.
And one thing I want to mention here, with that game. Now, I wouldn't say it was obviously the Packers' cleanest game of football. I would say by no means are we playing at our full capacity, and we're still showing that we can beat top tier teams, which I think is really scary, and nobody's recognizing that, which is fine. I don't want people to talk about it. I don't want people to look at it. But I hear in trash talk groups all across social media, the Bears or the Vikings, Lions are obviously first, but I would say they're playing close. I mean, Vikings for sure, playing at their full capacity. Lions, I got to admit, are probably pretty close. Obviously, Hutchinson's not in the show anymore, so that might be a little bit of an impact. But as a team, I would say, Goff's playing out of his mind. He's only getting like a few incompletions. And the Packers, we've had all sorts of problems, but yet we're still a contender. Now, if we clean those things up, how good are we going to be? I mean, that's the real question, because I said it today where I was talking to a coworker, and he's talking about, yeah, he has a friend who's a Vikings fan, and whatever, and they're obviously texting and being like, "Oh, we're still north of you guys, or on in the standings north of us,"
Sure.
and obviously Lions fans are saying they're the kings of the north. That's just foolish. They won the division once, whatever. Have it. I always say, if we were the Game of Thrones version of the North, we would be the Starks. I would say the Vikings are more like the Wildings. Now, if you don't know Game of Thrones references, this is going to go right over your head. The Lions are the Boltons, and then the Bears are kind of the Freys, the House of Frey. Now, Carter, are you a big Game of Thrones guy? Do you understand that reference?
Not huge, but I'm following along with you. I've watched quite a few episodes, but maybe not as diehard as you might have been.
Yeah, and I say that because we're not even playing at our full capacity. We're not even
Right.
playing with all our weapons working 100%. And I think when we hit that cog finally finds its gap and we're, the engine's moving correctly at the same time, we are going to be really freaking dangerous. I mean, really freaking dangerous because I mean, we played competitive against Minnesota and they're playing out of their mind. I think the Lions only beat Vikings by 2, and not to say that the Vikings. I really thought if there's 2 more minutes in that game, Packers are winning that game against Minnesota. Even ball, but obviously that can't happen. Can't add time onto the back of it. But what do you see in the potential with this team? Just because I think it's really underscored right now, but I think eventually we're gonna hit that. We're gonna find our groove, and we're gonna hit it running fast and really freaking fast. So let's have you talk about that. What do you see in the potential with this team?
Yeah, so one thing I keep going back to, and when I have these conversations with friends or family or coworkers, the one thing I keep going back to is we do not have to peak right now.
No,
Now is not the time that we need to be a peak team. Would it be cool that we could peak here and maintain it the entire season? Absolutely. Is that feasible? No, it's not. We don't need to start peaking until week 16 to the Super Bowl. That's when we need to start being the most perfect, well-oiled machine. Obviously, we're still going to make mistakes, but I am really excited about the mistakes that I see on the field, which is a little bit weird to say, but let me explain.
no, I know what you're
We're
talking about.
making
Yeah, go ahead.
mistakes. Okay. We're making mistakes that are completely coachable, and we're making mistakes, but we're making somewhat safe mistakes. Yes, we're throwing picks, but let's be honest, almost half of the picks that um, Jordan Love have aren't even directly into the hands of the actual corner or bad throws. Half of them right now have been Bo Melton slipped. It's popped off the hands of a few of our receivers. He has made plenty of mistakes. I will give him that, but he's also made plenty of awesome throws. I mean, that throw to the back of the end zone for Kraft was just insane. So I like where we are at. I don't mind us making the mistakes. Now, would I like a better margin in some of these wins? Yes. Uh, but a win's a win. And if we can keep coming away from these games with him throwing touchdowns and, mentally locking in those reps, because when
Leads
you
the
go
league
through those
in
mistakes,
touchdowns.
right, exactly. And it just seems like he knows and he's figuring it out. And every week he's getting better and he's making those mental adjustments. So I have no problem right now with him throwing picks or forcing things into coverage, that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, yes, if it gets picked off, all right, that's bad. If we lose a game, okay, that's even worse. But if we can make those mistakes and then learn from them and never make them again, we're going to be one of the best teams out there. So I really don't mind how we're playing right now. I don't mind that we're not doing everything perfect. We're still trying to work it all out. We're still trying a lot of fancy things with LaFleur's trying to, run those reverses. And unfortunately, half of them got stuffed this week. So teams are starting to catch on. But again, that's just another thing we can learn from. Another thing that we can put in our back pocket and lock in that mental rep where we understand, okay, this isn't working, but it could work if we did X, Y, Z, and we keep progressing and progressing. And by the time we get to the end of the season, I think we're going to peak at the right time, or at least we're trending to peak at the right time. And that's really when it's going to matter. So I'm super excited for the rest of the season. I think our defense is just going absolutely bananas. And I wouldn't say that they've peaked now because our run defense could be a lot stronger. Um, our pass defense is just phenomenal right now. Holding CJ Stroud to that 10 for 21, that's a great number for us. I mean, 21 passes is not a lot of passes for him in that team. So I think we did a great job of locking it down in the secondary. I know Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams ended up being one of the higher uh, PPF
Yep,
rated
rated.
duos. Yep, safety duos. So I don't know if they were the highest, but they were definitely top three. So, and then we had Carl Brooks that went in there, and he had an 80 grade this week. And then we had plenty of other people on that stat sheet that just went absolutely bananas on the defensive side of the ball. So I think we got plenty to learn. I think we got plenty of space to grow, but I think we have all the weapons that we need. I think we got the decision maker behind center that we need, and I think we got the defensive mind that we need. So I think at the end of the day, we're on a really good path. Just got to keep graduating slowly. We don't need to take huge leaps. If we take huge leaps, I think that's where we're going to start stumbling. I think as long as we keep this consistent, good play and try and be a little bit more consistent on the offensive side of the ball, we're going to have a great season.
And one thing I do want to mention here that has come up in recent days is I think you know what I'm talking about. So I'll smile on your face. Robert Salah, the Jets' former head coach, Matt LaFleur's best man at his wedding. He's been attending practices, and he does have a play sheet in hand. So I don't. I mean, you usually if it's just somebody visiting, play sheets aren't given out to them just because of privacy reasons, that sort of thing. But today, now we are talking on Thursday the 24th. He was given a play sheet along the sidelines, so he might be in addition to that defense, helping with that run and pass defense as well. And we know what he's capable of doing. He did in San Fran 3 years ago now, would it be? Because I think he had 2 years as head coach with the Jets. And I think it would be probably like 2022 he was there, maybe 2021 with San Fran.
Right.
So, I mean, what could he potentially bring to the table? Salah comes in with obviously a huge book of defensive tricks. So, what do you see on the potential with Salah coming to town?
I'm just shocked and I'm happy because with the play sheet, he was also seen in Packer gear.
That's
And
true.
again, following that trend of like, if he's just visiting, why are you going to give him Packer gear unless you're going to do something with him? So I think everything I've seen online so far has been that he's in a fluid role, that it's kind of like a day by day type thing, which no problem with. One thing I will say that's a little bit concerning to me is that we have Jeff Halfley, and I think Jeff Halfley right now is doing fantastic. I don't know if we need too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to that kind of stuff. However, if he's in this fluid role where he's not really taking over any positions, he's not really speaking up too much, I think he can be a valuable asset in picking apart all offense, because that's really where at least when I've gone through social media and I've gone through some of the practice tape, seen him mostly on the offensive side of things, not so much watching the defense, which if he's in more of like a capacity of telling you like, okay, from a defensive minded coach, I'm seeing this from you guys. And when I see this, I'm thinking this. Okay, well now Matt LaFleur can sit back and think, okay, what can I do to shift that focus somewhere else so then I can get something open over here? So I think them just kind of being in the same room and be able to communicate and just talk about the Packers offense and defense, I think that's just gonna be awesome. I think it's got a ton of potential. Um, I also saw a few things. One other thing that was concerning me, probably just a joke, but I saw someone say something along the lines of, he's coming in to pick up
Oh, we did.
the next DC role as Jeff Halfley goes out and finds another job. You lose me?
No, we're still with you. I think so.
Okay.
Oh, okay, now we're
Um,
back. We had a little stutter. It's all right.
okay. Sorry. So the other part that was concerning me is someone had mentioned that maybe Robert Saleh was there to replace Jeff Halfley, and Jeff
No,
Halfley was going to take off after this year. I really hope that doesn't happen because I think Jeff Halfley can stick around forever. But I don't really know what Saleh would really do other than be in this fluid role. I don't know if he'd really take a step back and be under a DC when he's just a head coach. And I don't know if I'd really want him in that kind of role either, with how important and how genius of a defensive mind he is. So I actually kind of want to see what your side of the thing is. What do you think he's going to end up doing with the Packers?
I think right now because no team is really besides his former team hunting for a head coach. I think he takes kind of an assistant role on the defensive side, helping out Jeff Hafley. Obviously, Hafley's the guy. I totally agree with that 4-3 defense. I think Salah can give a really good look at that because I believe San Fran ran something similar during those years. Now, don't quote me on that, but I think they had a similar style of defensive play. Obviously, very aggressive defense, um, and a mean defense. I think Greenlaw had to be probably a rookie at that time, and I mean he was just coming in. Fred Warner maybe a year, 2 years under his belt, but it was a young defense, a young high flying defense, and he was very successful, obviously at working that defensive side of the ball along with Bosa, some big names, and there's a number of names and that are just I can't even name right now because I'm just blanking on everything. I got some of the bigger ones. But I think he brings a because nobody's hunting right now. Obviously the Panthers, but does he really want to go to Carolina and deal with that mess? Probably not,
Right.
unless they give him a ton
He
of
just
money.
came from a dumpster fire. Yeah, he just came from a dumpster fire. I'm sure he doesn't want to go to another one and try and start over.
I think he's a little bit. Obviously, there's might be a little bit of spite with Rodgers, coming to because obviously I know people don't want to say it, but I think Rodgers may have had a little bit of say in that role, and because he did talk to him the day before, and then he played the, oh, I didn't hear anything about it. Obviously, you heard something about it. The whole team's formulated around you. They just picked up Devontae for because of you, and obviously everything. Woody Johnson, the owner, is right on board with you with it, whatever you're saying, and I think he may have had a little bit of say in it. Obviously, now, I'm not going to try to quote it and make it more out of it than it is, but I think there might be a little bit of spite there. And he just wants to show that he's still a capable coach. And, the more coaching opportunities you have, the better future jobs, because obviously things didn't work out with the Jets as a head coach. And if you can do a good job, maybe you can get picked up somewhere else or looked at somewhere by some other team. And I think this is a great place to be because we are a structured team. We have this roster, we have a good roster, and we have a good coaching staff. I this is the first time in a long time I haven't been so frustrated with coaching staffs, like not being aggressive enough, being too passive, that sort of thing. I think we're in a really sweet spot with Lafleur and everybody else on that in that room. So I think Salah would just make a perfect, just for the end of the year, just to get to the end of the year, whatever, and let the year play out. And then next year he can go and do whatever he would like to do, wherever he wants to go. But I think if he decides to stay here and play or coach with the Green Bay Packers as even like I know you did mention going from a head coach to like an assistant wouldn't be the greatest move. Just ego wise. But if you got nothing to lose right now, I mean, you're otherwise going to be sitting at home watching football on the couch. Why not stick in Green Bay? Why not give that help out to your good friend and pal? Because we can obviously use it and use it as a really vital weapon because he was a vital weapon in San Fran. And things fell apart in the Jets, but a lot of that might.
I think. Sorry, I think he's gonna get another head coaching
Oh,
job
I
at
do
some
too. I
point in
do
the
too.
future. Because I think I've definitely mentioned this when we talked about it a while ago. I don't really think it's his fault that
No.
the Jets just weren't great. I mean, he went from having Sam Darnold to Zach Wilson to Zach Wilson to having Aaron Rodgers for 4 plays, and then back to Zach Wilson. So, or somewhere along, kind of what is the trend has been. So, I mean, he hasn't really had a ton of opportunities. And when you talk about the Jets defense, because he's a defensive-minded
Yep.
head coach, they were insane. And the only reason that they stayed in half of those games when they had those quarterbacks that weren't producing as well. Now I know Sam Darnold is doing his thing out there in Minnesota, and of course I wish Zach Wilson the best out there in Broncos territory, but the defense kept them in those games. So it seems like he will definitely get a job somewhere else, especially if we end up going pretty far in the postseason. It'd just be a better look for him, of course, if we did. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great opportunity. I just hope it plays out well. I hope there's not any rubbing or any issues with, maybe LaFleur playing favorites with Salah over having Jeff Hafley, even though Hafley's been there and been producing. I hope that there's not any rubbing or tension there. Um, just to keep that locker room in check. Because if there is, it's not impossible to get over because they're grown men making a lot of money to, just get over it. Uh, But again, we've seen in locker rooms that tension never ends up working out well. So I just hope everything plays out well, and I think it will. I'm very optimistic. Um, but I'm also a devil's advocate, so I just want to make sure that that's not the case.
And I think it was actually yesterday Lafleur talked about that, and he said he would give, Jeff Hafley obviously it's his defense. They're not going to step on toes. I think Salah knows that. He's just there as a support role right now, um, until he finds something else. And I think that would be a perfect spot for obviously the team, Jeff Hafley and Robert Salah, just because I think the world of this man, and he can do a lot of good for Green Bay. But let's move on from this topic here, and let's just talk about the Jaguars. We got to play in Florida. The Packers go down to Jacksonville this week, and they have to take on the Jaguars. Now, Jaguars obviously struggling um, out of the gates, really not looking great. Trevor Lawrence kind of looks like dog water, and he hasn't been playing well. But the Chiefs do not travel well in Florida, and that has always been the case. So let's talk here, and let's give a score prediction. What is your prediction here for this Jaguars Packers game as we look ahead to this week?
Like you said, we end up always spoiling down there in the heat and the humidity. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think with the way that the Jaguars have been playing recently, they're not going to be a super. I don't think it's going to be a great game in the sense it's going to be as close as our last one, but I think they do got an edge. We don't, like you said, we don't play well down there. So I think it's not going to be a high scoring game. I imagine it's probably going to be maybe I'd say 28 to 17, something like that. Not a huge scoring game, but we're going to get away from them and we're going to have a nice, comfortable lead.
Okay. Yeah, I was in the same kind of direction. Not a huge scoring game, not a lot of offense running around. Um, Obviously, I think defense is going to play a huge role in this contest again, and it'll be interesting to see how it does, especially with a struggling offense from the Jaguars. The defense is going to probably get some real opportunities here to make some big plays, as the Jaguars are likely going to be, I'm hoping, now knock on wood, working from behind. I will knock on a little piece of wood here that I got right next to me. And you got to do it for safety reasons, and try to make stretch plays, try to take riskier plays, and I think the defense can punish them on those things. So my score prediction for this upcoming game here in Jacksonville, obviously cheese rots in the humidity, and you got to keep it cold. That's why we keep it in fridges, people. And I'm gonna go 21 for the Packers, and then I'm gonna go 10 for the Jaguars. I think that's a pretty fair score prediction. I think Lawrence obviously finds somebody in the mix, just gets a score there, and then a field goal likely late second half, as the Packers kind of let up on that defensive side of the ball. And then 21-10, I'm going to go with Packers. Go Pack, go, obviously. Always rooting for them, but we do not play well in the swamps. But I think we do okay here. It's not too far south. It's not Tampa Bay, thank God. Because we always struggle in Tampa. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I think at least Jacksonville, we have a chance here. And 21-10.
I have a good feeling that we didn't get any takeaways last game, which that might be seen as a negative on the score sheet. But again, we played out of our minds defensively. I think that you're right. He's going to have to air it out. Lawrence is going to have to throw it because their run game is so-so, and I think that's going to be our primary focus this week, knowing that they're not so great in the pass game. So they're going to try to attack us, which I don't blame them at all. It's what they got to do to start winning games. And I think that's going to be a great opportunity for us. We're going to start getting some picks. Xavier's going to be back on that the role of getting interceptions. That'd be great to get him back on that. I think there's going to be a few fumbles down there. It's probably going to be humid, might even be a little rainy, so we'll see what happens. Um, but I think it's going to be a good game. I think at the end of the day, we're going to be happy with the lead. I think we just got to stay consistent. I think the Packers offense specifically needs to stay a little bit more consistent. Stop throwing it, into crazy coverage, which we did a few times. And Jordan Love did get picked off throwing it into triple coverage to Christian Watson. So I think as long as he, makes those errors and makes them minimal, we'll be all right. And I think we're going to come out with a win. I think we're going to end up getting one defensive score. That'll be my bold prediction. I think to put up at least 6 points on the defensive side.
I think that's a great prediction. I think defense has a real opportunity here. And now talks are with Devontae Wyatt coming back, which could be huge for that D line. Um, Helping out in interior side of things, helping Kenny get through. TJ Slate, and also they're going to probably be jumping back and forth, but giving him some rest as well on that 4-3. So it'll be interesting to see. But let's move on here and let's talk about the other teams, the enemies around the North, as we could say, as we are surrounded by them. But let's start with the Bears. The Bears had the bye, and I still think they lost the bye week. Obviously, every other team pretty much, besides the Vikings, took the L. But you know, got to give the Bears the loss there. But they do take on the Commanders this week with a hurt Jaden Daniels. So that's a huge impact in that contest. I don't see the Bears losing this one without Jaden Daniels. I was hoping Jaden Daniels would play, so they would lose. But what are your thoughts?
I think you're right. I think the Commanders, without their leader and their rookie quarterback, are going to be a little bit shallow. I don't think that they're not going to play great. But offensively, he puts a lot of the team on his back. They got some playmakers, but he's the one that's making the final decisions. And at the end of the day, with him being hurt, is a huge, huge blow to the offensive side. Now their defense is pretty good, actually. I believe they're fairly up there in terms um,
Yeah,
of
with
their
their
defense
overhyped
being pretty
Jalen
rated.
Johnson.
Yeah. So I think it'll be okay. I think the Bears defense will take care of it, and I think that they're going to be just fine. And then of course the Commanders defense isn't horrible themselves either. They're not
No.
great, but I think without that quarterback being there to keep the offense on the field and let the defense get a break, the Bears got the opportunity to go all gas, no brakes, and just keep running it, and maybe not running it, but just keep that ball moving and keep tossing it, keep slinging the rock and getting around there. And I imagine the Bears end up coming out with this one as well.
And unfortunately, I do too, which is always
Yeah,
painful week for us because then we hear all the hype behind the Bears. Bears fans, obviously, we've mentioned this before. They're kind of on a Super Bowl or bust um, rally, even though I
exactly.
don't think they're Super Bowl ready um, as a team. But I think they do get the win, unfortunately, to the Commanders, which would be, I mean, really, it's kind of a shame that Daniels gets the rib injury this past week, and now this number one pick and number two pick, which I think the number two pick's playing out of his mind and really showing the NFL who he is. Number one, he's playing well. He's starting to get better. But I think that would have been a really cool game to watch. But I got to go with the Bears, unfortunately, in this one if I'm going to be picking correctly. I'm hoping for the Commanders, but I got a feeling it's going to be the Bears. It would be funny if the Commanders get the win because then we can just roast them all week and have a little fun with it. Obviously, you got to do that. But I'm going to take the Bears. I'll give them 24, and I'll give the Commanders without Jaden Daniels. They still got McLaurin in there. They still got like Ertz. They have a solid roster, but without that quarterback playing there, I'm going to give them maybe 10 again. I just don't see it happening without Daniels. What's your score prediction for that one?
Actually think the Bears are gonna, like I said, just all gas, no brakes. They got an opportunity to really go out there and just heave the ball around or run it around. So I think it's actually going to be a little bit of a more of a high scoring affair on their side of the ball. So I'd actually predict them being somewhere in the 34 range. And then, like you said, they're just the Commanders probably aren't going to be able to get the ball rolling and stay out on the field long enough. Defense is going to get tired. They're not going to be able to keep up with the Bears offense, especially when they got electric receivers, running backs, quarterback. Um, they just need to figure out that line. But
Yeah, I was
I
going to
think the
say they,
Commanders
they don't have a line.
I imagine the Commanders will probably get down in the red zone, maybe not the red zone, but near it once or twice, enough for them to kick the ball a few times. So I'll actually give them 13 points. I imagine they'll score once and then probably put up 2 field goals after that.
Now, side topic. I know we haven't discussed this, but what does that do for the Bears, like win credentials? Like they're talking about the teams with single wins that they've been beating up on. We talked about it before with the Panthers when they beat up on them and just kind of rallied. Is this a credible win? Would you say without Daniels, or is it still a? I mean, obviously a win's a win, but we're talking about like credible, kind of non-credible winning teams versus non-winning teams. But without Daniels, Alyssa, I mean that's like taking out I mean, LeBron on Cleveland, you're left with some players, but it's not going to be real. I mean, let's say 2016 Cleveland with Kevin Love and Kyrie and whatever, but it's not real great, but it's still okay. Is that still is that, you know what I'm talking about? Is that still a credible win?
No. I think, well, let's put it like this. I think they're going to win regardless. Which again sucks to say because I don't hope they
Oh,
win,
I
but I
hate the
think they're
Bears.
going. I think that it's going to be more on how he plays, because they're going to get the ball a ton. Again, their defense is pretty good. They're going to be able to hold the Commanders to something, and they're going to get that ball quite a few times. So, I think it really comes down to how many points that he's able to put up. They don't have the greatest defense, but it's not bad either. It's a decent defense. If he can go out there and put some good points up there, on his own terms. Now, if they get a bunch of picks like Houston, not Houston, but how we kind of gave it up on the 11-yard line twice, that won't really be a credible win for me. I would really like to see him play a good game against a good defense, and not because his defense is making it easy for him. I'd like to see him drive that football. If he puts together 6 or 7 drives where he goes 70, 50 to 70 yards down the field, I think that's a credible win for him because again, the Commanders defense, they're still stout. They got Bobby Wagner out there. They got some defensive
Yeah,
guys.
Bobby Wagner at
Um,
100 years old.
Hey, he still hits you pretty hard. But I think at the end of the day, I think if he puts a lot of good drives together and makes smart decisions, it'll be a credible win. Now, if he goes out there and plays super sloppy and his defense carries him and he scores like only 2 times and gets him down in the red zone to kick field goals, I think that's going to look really, really bad for the brand. But if he goes out there and dominates, then I think it'll be a credible win.
And let's move on then. So Minnesota and the Lions did play. We mentioned it before. Lions winning 31-29. And we'll move on to those two teams here. We'll start with Minnesota, actually. In that contest, Darnold looked pretty good. 22 for 27, 259 yards, 2 TDs, 1 interception. Goff, 22 for 25, 280 yards, 2 TDs. We mentioned before he's kind of playing out of his mind. And they're kind of peaking, I would say, right now. But I'm going to keep my bias out of it. Just get through the stats here. Gibbs, 15 carries and 116 yards, 2 TDs. Jones, former Packer, 14 carries, 93 yards, and 1 TD. And then St. Brown, 8 receptions, 112 yards, 1 TD. And Jefferson, 7 receptions, 81 yards, 1 TD. But we'll talk here. Lions move on to play the Titans, who have struggled and really haven't looked good. And just more bad news. I mean, Tennessee's kind of one of those teams that, I'll be frank, it's kind of where careers go to die. If I'm being nice, like you get the like Randy Moss at the end of his career went there, um, and it's just like I mean Titans really don't have a ton going, but Lions and Titans, how does this one finish up?
Uh, I'm putting Jared Goff in for my fantasy. I'll be honest. I'm taking A Rod out and I'm putting him in.
Oh,
He's
A
gonna
Rod's
just
been
have
awful.
yeah, no, it's not even worth it anymore. But I think he's gonna have another great game. I mean, if I remember correctly, I remember he for sure went 18 for 18. I don't remember when he first or when the first incompletion was, but he is just going insane. He's throwing the ball in all the correct places. He's making the smartest decisions. He's not throwing the ball away. He's making the most of the opportunities that every time that ball snaps, he's playing it super super smart. And I completely agree with you. I think they're actually pretty close to peaking. I don't know if they're at their peak, but with their record right now, I mean they're obviously a number one in the North, and they're doing pretty well right now. So I think it's gonna be a good game for them. They're gonna go out there and just dominate, especially with Tennessee just losing one of their premier wide receivers. Will Levis is out. They're just kind of falling apart, and we're not even halfway through the season yet. So it's probably going to be an easy win for the Lions. I imagine this one's going to be a high-scoring affair for their side. I imagine they're actually only going to kick field goals for the Titans, so I'm going to give the Titans 9 points, and I imagine that the Detroit Lions are probably going to end up putting up probably 42 plus points.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say a similar stats here. I'm gonna go Lions. Let's go 45. I'm going to give them 45, right north of 42. And then obviously probably 9 for the Titans, just knocking through field goals, nothing really happening. I mean, Titans are just. If I was in Nashville, I wouldn't even bother watching the Titans. I mean, Titans
I just
since King Henry have been terrible.
like what do you? I mean, it's just hard. It's hard when you got people not bought into. I mean, clearly D Hop was out. He wasn't trying to play, and Will Levis is doing his best, but he's just getting memed every week.
Yeah,
So I think I think this season it's just kind of been against the Tennessee Titans, and I got nothing against their coaching staff or it just sometimes it's just not your year, and clearly it's just hard to click.
I mean,
And
with
if
them,
you don't,
it's never the year.
yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah,
Again, like you said, once Derrick Henry left and they didn't have a run game, kind of just took away from everything because then their pass game got super exposed because they hardly threw the ball. They handed it off to their titan of a man, and he just ran the ball through everybody. So I don't
yeah.
think not going to be great for them.
If I was in Tennessee, I wouldn't even bother watching pro sports. I'd just go to the Vols game in
Yeah.
football. I mean, you can go to the Predators game. Predators are a pretty solid roster for hockey, but you got country music there. Just enjoy that. Forget about the pro football scene, and I would just go to the Volunteers games. And now on the other side, the Vikings play the Rams actually tonight. Now we are talking on Thursday. In Rams, solid team, and Puka Nakua is going to be back in the contest. It sounds like for tonight. I thought I heard that he's ready to go for tonight's game. Hawkinson obviously out for the Vikings. So this makes an interesting game. Vikings coming off a loss. We'll see if that loss lingers here tonight. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it was actually great. Just to backtrack a little, it was great seeing the Vikings lose. It was
Yes,
just
it was.
fantastic.
Yes,
And
it was.
finally, they didn't have a 5-0 record and they weren't undefeated. So it was great. That was awesome. I think this might be where
But I
they start
still don't
falling
like
off a
the
little bit.
Lions. I can't stand them.
Yeah, no. However, I think Cooper is also back in, so I think the the offense for the Rams is going to be back up to pretty much full speed. Obviously, they're not going to do fantastic coming off of those injuries. They're going to have, probably limited play clock, or limited plays that is. Where the Vikings are just going to start balling out again. They got Justin Jefferson going late last week, and it just wasn't enough for them. Like you said, it was a close game, so we'll see what happens. I think the Vikings are going to end up. I think this one's actually going to be a pretty close scoring game. I
Yeah.
don't think defense is going to play much of a part in it. I think Matthew Stafford has seen enough Vikings defenses that he understands that they're going to be covering. They're going to play a lot of zone, and he's really good about just nickeling and diming it, making those smart decisions, just like golf is. I know everyone remembers the crazy stat of their transition to each other's teams, and then it almost was the perfect trade because they had the almost exact stats across the board. So I think that they're going to play pretty well. I think it's probably going to be more of an offensive game. This one, um, I think I'm actually going to give it to the Rams. I
I
kind of
was
want
gonna
to will
too.
this one into
I was
existence.
gonna too.
Oh, come on, no. I really want to will this one into existence because I think the Lions are. I mean, I don't like the Lions. I don't like the
Oh,
Bears. I don't like the
I
Vikings.
can't.
But I don't
One
pick
real thing,
anybody.
quick real thing, or quick thing. Where are all these Lions fans coming from? They emerged from their caves and their holes in the ground of hiding for as long as I've been alive, and now they're all over social media going, "Oh, look at us!" Like, "Oh, we're the best team, and we're gonna kick your teeth in and bite your kneecap," as Dan Campbell says. Oh, the Lions fans, Vikings fans, Bears fans. The North is surrounded by just clowns, and it's like, oh, here comes the circus every time they get a win. But I'll let you talk about it. Let's get that score prediction.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let the Rams win this one. I really, really, really
Oh,
want the
I'm
Rams to
hoping.
win this one. So I think it's gonna, like I said, high scoring affair. I imagine it's probably gonna be both in the 30s. Um, I think a wild number. I think it might be a 38-34, just something close. Like it's gonna be outside of a field goal, but it's gonna be within a touchdown. It's gonna probably come down to one of the last drives, and it'll probably end up coming down to one defensive play. So towards the end of the game, or at least in the entire game, keep your eye out for that one defensive play. I imagine that one of them is gonna pop up, and it's gonna end up determining the game at the end of the day.
And I was going to go something similar, a little less high scoring. Um,
Okay.
I was going to go 31 for the Rams, and then I was going to go about 28 for the Vikings, maybe 20. Yeah, I'm going to stick at that 28, 27 range. Um, I think they can get this upset. I think obviously you got Puka and you got Cooper, Stafford there as well. It's going to be a little bit different with the injuries, but I think Kyron Williams, a really good back that's really underrated. He was really good against us too, and I think he has a really big game tonight. Just marching through the defense and gets over 100 yards rushing. I'm going to put it somewhere in the 120 range, obviously breaking things down, helping out that receiving core. And then Willikit, or whatever, what was his name? The tall guy with long hair, Willikit, I think his last name was.
Or Weatherspoon?
Wilmington?
Witherspoon?
Something.
Wilmington?
I can't
I know what
remember.
you're talking about. Number 88. Number 88.
Yes.
He's not a. Is he a rookie?
He,
Oh man, that's not.
yeah, I
I don't
know.
pay
He
attention
might have
to
been
names.
a.
Uh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Long dread hair. Yeah,
Yep, yep,
88.
yep. That guy that really came 88. He really came into play. I think he is a big game too, because he's kind of like underrated. Like you're not going to put your top corner on him, but you're especially with Puka and them back. Because they could go off anytime, and they got a really good receiving core. And I think Stafford utilizes that. He finds a way around it. Sean McVay gets creative. And I think the Rams get a win here tonight. And I really hope so too. I just want to see the Vikings drop another.
Please.
Yeah, I know. It's just like praying to Lord Lombardi. Come on, get
I
that.
think that's a great point you made about the rushing because especially with Puka and Cutback, they're just going to be so
Yeah,
focused
it's gonna
on
break
trying to
down that
stop those
defense.
guys. And we all know that the Vikings play a lot of zones. So with them breaking out and trying to back off to make sure that they can keep Stafford contained and not let him throw all over, I think Kyron Williams is really going to have a pop-off game again. And he's going to have a good one. I hope he does because, like you said, he's a great running back. He's very shifty. And he plays his heart out. So I'd like to see that. Love to see the Vikings take an L. I'd love to see the Lions take an L, but hey, we
Love
can't
to
make all
see
of our wishes.
Bears take an L. Love to see everybody but us take an L. Given
As
how the
long as
North has.
one of those teams win or loses, that's all that matters to me. One of them, so we can get one more spot up, and then we just keep coasting.
Well, then we'd have to get a loss from either the Vikings or the Lions to get a spot up, and us getting a win to help us out. But
We can do
a couple other topics around the league. The Jets still suck, and nothing is changing for the New York
it.
primetime Jets. What is going on there, Mr. Carter? You're a football mind, and obviously we
Oh,
both love Rodgers and what he did for Green Bay, and gave us so many enjoyable years of football. But I mean, he has honestly looked like dog water, and it has been pretty piss poor over there in New York. And I think even with Devontae there, you saw his face at the end of the game. He looked shocked, and he looked like, "Oh, I'm ready for a trade again." But oh my gosh, the Jets still suck.
yeah, imagine that. They got rid of their head coach who was keeping them in games, which, whatever public opinion, whatever they got to say doesn't really matter because everyone in the Jets organization knew it wasn't Robert Sala's fault. So I think it's hilarious. It's just bad that
It's just such
they
a
get rid
circle.
of their head coach.
It's a
They make
circle for
all these
them.
changes. Yeah, and then they just Aaron Rodgers is still the problem. We've known it. I mean, no one wants to admit it because everyone thinks he is the GOAT. And again, in a Green Bay through and through, I think he is the GOAT.
Oh,
Right next to Tom Brady in terms of talent and in terms of,
oh, I think better
ability.
in talent.
But being realistic, he's just not playing good. He's
He's
throwing
very
balls
egoistic
crazy.
too.
He's blaming everybody else for the issues that they have, which again isn't completely unwarranted because they do have other issues, but he's got to remember that he's the one that picks the ball up every single play. He's got to be the one making these decisions. And if he is as good as he is, he needs to start delivering those balls and making adjustments on the fly. We've known from the plenty of years he's been at the Packers, he's been able to operate, change routes, change the play, change the snap count. He can do that all within, a few beats. It seems like now that he's on the Jets, it's just not there. He's just not making any magic happen. And when he does scramble, I feel like I'm holding my breath.
Oh my
So I
God,
know that
watching
the
him
entire
scramble.
Jets, Oh, it's scary.
Like
You're like,
watching him,
is he gonna blow up again? I don't know. Like, so
yeah,
the
watching
dumpster
him
fire.
scramble is
The
like
Packers.
watching a senior person running across the street or something. It's like, oh my god, yeah, be careful, be careful, don't trip.
Don't fall. Don't fall. Don't
It's
fall like that, at least, please.
it
No.
is brutal to watch him, and I'm sorry, I loved Rogers. I have a cardboard cutout of him. I have his jersey. Um, he was awesome in Green Bay. And then I think the Packers won this one again. I as much as we initially were like, oh, we let him go. Why would we let him go? He's still playing at playoff caliber. But for whatever reason, the Jets have exhausted him already. And I mean, the storylines continue with him bringing in Devontae Adams. They showed up on the McAfee contest. Then I think Adams only had like 30 yards in the game and like 3 catches, and didn't have any in the second half. And it's like, oh my god.
It was so funny
And
because
Jets
it's
fans
coming
are
from like
so
my
upset.
standpoint.
They are so
Yeah,
upset. They had a
that
better.
first play. Go ahead.
Oh, they had a better season with Zach Wilson at this point than they do now with Aaron Rodgers. But go ahead, say what you were gonna say.
That stat was crazy, but it was crazy to see the like from the very first play. I was like, okay, we all know it's going to Devontae. This is going to be the one that kind of makes or breaks the whole game. I was like, just like thinking about it prior, I'm like, this is going to be the biggest pass of the game. And then what happened? He threw the out route or curl route, and he was out of bounds. He threw it way out of his reach. It was like, all right, well, this is how this game's going to go. Everything's going to be super close, but nothing's going to connect. Even going back to the Garrett Wilson bounce right off his chest into
Oh,
the
that was funny.
what do they call him? Beanie Baby, or yeah, they call him Beanie, right?
I do
That
not know.
corner, right? He had that corner for the Steelers had an amazing game, and he, that one just landed right in his lap. But it's like, okay, how much can you even blame on the coaching staff, on Robert Saleh, on Daniel Hackett when plays like that are happening? It's just like bad luck for them, and then every time they get a little bit of good luck, it's like they get a penalty or XYZ happens. And then when they were driving on that last game, they had one of their linemen beef with one of the Steelers guys, and then they got a 15-yard loss. So it's like, okay, what are you guys doing? You're shooting yourselves in the foot. I get you're pissed off because you're losing, but like, you really just lost yourself the game there, and it all kind of comes around to the fact that Aaron's just got to play a little bit better. He's got to, make that magic happen, and he's got every single weapon around him. He's got everything he needs.
He had the Green Bay 2021 roster on him. Um,
Right.
yeah,
He's
but
got everybody.
every time I watch a Jets game, I can't help but think of I don't know if you've ever seen the movie King of Staten Island with Pete Davidson
Yes.
and Bill Burr's the stepdad, and he's like, I'm an idiot. You're the one who bets on the Jets, and then Bill Burr goes, "You Jets are coming back. They're gonna come back." And he's like, "You gotta believe," and it's like that one relates so much to this season for them because I know there was that one fan crying, telling him to get Rodgers a Super Bowl when Rodgers was in off season training camp. And he's Rogers like yeah, buddy, and he's like literally crying. He's like, please get us a Super Bowl. And now you watch them, and it's just like, oh my god, they're so pissed off, and it's so funny
Right.
with the New York because they're a tough environment. I give them that, but I mean he's looked terrible. The whole team's looked terrible, and then the Pat McAfee thing with the reveal, he looks off to the side, and then all of a sudden Devontae Adams in the picture, like they're gonna go, like they're the 1-2 combo, basically Will Ferrell and John C. Riley, coming into the show, and then they play on the field and they look like that. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is terrible. Um,
It was almost like the same feeling of when Devontae specifically went from Green Bay and went to the Raiders because he's like, oh, I got my college quarterback. We're gonna
yep,
have this
the
connection. It's
buddies.
gonna be crazy.
I
And
know,
then it's like, oh, that didn't happen at all. So
just
I
gets hit
like
by a dump
Devontae.
truck.
Yeah, and I like Devontae. I don't want it to come off the wrong way that I don't like Devontae or I don't like Aaron. Am I a little spiteful that they both left when I thought that they could both, stay there their entire career? Sure, I'm a Packer fan. Um, but it's funny to see them on the same team again,
Yeah,
not in the green and gold, and not produce. Again, I wish him the best because I really like Devontae, I really like Aaron, but it's just a little comical when we're having a decent season over here, and then these guys are back on the team, and then the first time out, there it's all this hype, and they just fall so flat on their
In
face. Like
all
it's
the
just
primetime
the
games
momentum
too.
killer. Right. And then, of course, if you've seen the Devonte Adams quote, he's like, the sideline was dead. No one was juiced up. No one was acting like they're a winner. Yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, well, if Devonte Adams just showed up here for 3 days of practice in a game, even he's already seeing that there's not enough juice around the team. What does that say about the rest of your season? Do you really think the rest of your season is going to start kicking off from here? Or is it going to stay that same kind of crappy trajectory that they have at the current moment?
I swear Devonte Adams looks like 20 minutes ahead into his future to plan things. Um, doesn't really look too deep. But let's move on
You
here.
saw the
Just
bag.
yeah, just kind of mention DeAndre Hopkins with the Chiefs now. And yeah, what do you think's gonna happen there?
I was kind of hurt a little bit for Devon or sorry, Deontay
DeAndre.
oof, Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins. My bad. A little bit of a tongue twister there. I felt bad because they gave him a fifth round pick with a fourth round option. Like that's a little disrespectful for the wide receiver that DeAndre Hopkins is. Now, has he produced the last few
No.
years? No, not really. And he's kind of bounced around. However, has he really had a superior quarterback or been in a great position? I would say more so uh, with the Cardinals, down there. But now he's got Patrick Mahomes. And what do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to fall flat on his face, or is he going to be DeAndre Hopkins and he's going to go absolutely nuts? Me personally, I am planning for the worst, and I just have a great feeling that the currently not so great Kansas
A
City
lot of
Chiefs are
refs
just going to get
help.
extremely better. Yeah, a lot of refs help. I think they're going to start getting a little less refs help, and they're just going to start
I
going
I
nuts.
really don't see it, but yeah, Hopkins over. I don't think he could. I'm just going extreme here. Could have a really big season. He could really turn things around. Now, do I think that? Not necessarily with the way Patrick Mahomes is playing. Again, I sent out a tweet. I told you this before the show that on the MVP calendar or rankings, the Fox NFL Sunday had Patrick Mahomes at second. Then I posted a picture of his ESPN stats, and he has 6 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, tied with Love for interceptions, and not even halfway comparable in touchdowns. And I think even with this last weekend, everybody's making a big deal about that sideline run that he did. I think that's a factor of. I mean, I'm gonna sound like a Mahomes hater. I don't really care. It's going to be the result of him getting penalties for roughing and that sort of thing. Because I think all linebackers stopped, assuming that. And then I did see, let me just finish this. All linebackers stopped, and he saw that, and he just cut it up, and that's why he got those yards. I think if the linebackers were, if he was a running back, he would have been left for no gain. And if he was Patrick Mahomes, he would have been. It wasn't Patrick Mahomes. He would have been left for no game. Everybody else would have got knocked to the sideline. But the one thing I did see, which I thought was a really good idea, especially for those kind of situations, is a surrender rule. So, like, if the quarterback is running towards the sideline, and it looked because he did look like he was going to stop or slow down because it's not like he was really dashing towards the sideline. He kind of like slowed up and then he just cut back real quick. So if the refs see like the chest go up and the ball be carried looser, they can call a surrender. A guy mentioned calling a surrender, and that would put the ball right there. Because obviously with the penalties and the roughing, that would make things interesting. Now, with running, if they see that, now this is all going to be an objectionable thing. It's going to be like pass interference. But if they see that, they could call it down right there, and they won't get the extra yards and all the other hype. And then it was at the end of the play when he had to run the guy over. Obviously, that guy's not going to go up and try to pop you because he's going to get the penalty. So there's a lot of reasons where I think the refs played a factor in that one. Especially with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who Patrick Mahomes has not been playing well, and I'm not going to give him any more credit than he deserves. And I got 5,000 favorites on that tweet, which is the most I've ever gotten. And I got people talking to me about, well, it's based on his MVP perspective, like he could potentially turn things around. And I'm like, is it because it said through week 7, so you would expect it
Right.
to be all from stats from this current year. but it's like, why are we running off perspective? Why is he the second favorite? And he's, I think he was 26 in the league in touchdowns and tied for first in the league in interceptions. And I'm like, how is he on this list? Like, how is he even mentioned on this list? He should be nowhere near it.
Yeah, it seemed like for everybody else, it was stats, like stats, 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 stats,
Yep.
stats. But then when it came to him, it was like, oh, well, he's 6-0, so put him up there. And I don't agree with it because I completely agree with the stats part. If you've thrown that many interceptions and at one point you had more interceptions than touchdowns, it's like, okay,
He still has
do you
that.
really deserve to be right? Do you still deserve to be on that list? No, I don't think you deserve it at all. But when you're 6-0 and you're still somehow winning these games, whether it's with the refs' help or not,
The
all
defense
right,
is
you're
bailing him
you're gonna
out.
have to. Yeah, so I think that's why that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be such a huge pickup for them, especially with the amount of receivers that have gone down for them. It seems like that's just going to be a huge target for them. And if he's not a huge target, it's going to be even better for Travis Kelsey or someone of that nature where they can start getting him open in the bottom and start taking the top off the defense with D Hop. So I don't like it. I think it was stupid that they gave him away for a fifth round draft pick. I think that's a horrible trade. Um, Especially when you're going to the Chiefs. Like even if he isn't worth a fifth round draft
Oh, I
pick,
would
you're
make it
giving it
as
to the
painful
Chiefs.
as possible for them.
Right. Why didn't all 31 teams just get together and say, "Hey, let's not give the former two-time Super Bowl winning champions or two in a row that is, let's not give him more weapons. Let's actually try and not." And yeah, well, it's crazy, but they got him and we'll see what happens. I think it's going to I think I don't know what I think because Patrick Mahomes is such a crazy athlete that whether he's in the game or not, he's somehow going to find a way to win the game. So it's hard to kind of put anything solid on that team, but coming from a Packers perspective, I would really hope that their season starts going a little bit more south, so we don't have to face as strong of a team when it comes to playoffs.
And I really don't think they're that strong of a team. I think most teams in the AFC taking a step back. Actually, even like the Bills, they're strong, yes, and they just got a big signing with, Amari Cooper, which is I think going to be a huge help for them. But I think the AFC is a little bit weaker right now than the NFC. If I'm speaking on bias, maybe a little biasly, um, maybe a touch. But I think the defense has been bailing out Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, early in the season, you got those late games pass interference with the one against the Bengals. Nobody knows how that was called. Part of the script, apparently. And so, yeah, I really don't. I'm hoping D Hop doesn't really contribute to that team. I'm hoping it's just kind of another addition. Juju Smith Schuster's still there. He's playing pretty well. So they got a lot of veterans on that team, aging roster. We'll see what happens. I think the Packers, if they had to face them, are a better team right now. Just playing around the clock, even though they aren't 6-0. But do you have any last thoughts before we wrap things up?
Other than go pack go, no. I'm really excited about this week. I think we got a great opportunity ahead of us. I think the rest of our season is bright and shining. Um, I think that we're gonna do great, and it's going to be a longer season. Obviously 18 weeks is a long time and we got a lot of games left. But I'm super excited. I'm very optimistic about this year. I think we've really put up some good wins and we've had some hard losses, but I think that we're on the up and up and we're going to start peaking here pretty soon and we're going to start getting, really, really into a good working machine and it's going to be a great season for us.
All right, Packer fans, you've heard it from Carter here on the Beer, Meat, and Cheese podcast. Things looking up for the Packers as we do go to Florida and we go take on the Jacksonville Jaguars this weekend. Obviously, we're hoping for another loss, maybe two within the division. Vikings, hopefully, they lose tonight to the Rams. And Lions, I mean, I don't really see it to the Titans, but if something miraculous happens, it happens. We never know. And then, obviously, the Bears to the Commanders. Going to be a closer contest, but I'm thinking the Bears might win it, but you never know. So that'll wrap things up here on the Beer, Meat, and Cheese podcast, ladies and gentlemen. And we all hope you have a fantastic weekend and watch a bunch of football and enjoy it. Make sure to chime in. You can always tweet at us or at Real Johnny Samp and at Cart14Deck. We are active on Twitter. And then if you do see us on Spotify, make sure to give us a follow. We do appreciate it. And give us a listen there, or else give us a listen here on YouTube, or give us a watch here on YouTube. It's always great to hear from fans, see things from fans. And if you would like to contribute anything, make sure to tweet at us. Or if you potentially want to get on the show, make sure to reach out to us, and we'll have to have a little talk with you. Clear everything through, and we'll have a chat. We're all about the fans, and we're all about having fun here on the Beer, Meat, and Cheese Potty. Everything you need for your tailgate, and so much more. So go Pack, go! Let's go beat those Jaguars, and let's have a great weekend. Have a great night, everybody.